So, in terms of what I gathered from the reading, and what I learned about globalization is first from the natural law lecture. I think I learned that a lot of our behavior is kind of determined by the laws that we follow in our own countries, and the people around us, and sort of not only the uh, literal laws, but also kind of like the cultural norms that develop out of those laws. And I think because that seems to be what the way that laws are constructed is through just like organizing specific people in a country. I think increasing globalization presents a lot of new problems to how we create laws, insofar as like there's a lot more migration and also a lot of, as that article mentioned, sort of like mixing of different cultures that we need to sort of be able to better deal with through laws. So three of these problems, I think, first is uh, how we deal with cultural difference. I think is really different, especially because for example, the metamorphosis brings out a really interesting problem, which is that when we see people who are different to us, or sort of, I guess in this story, when uh, the main character's family sees that he's become a cockroach, is that it creates a lot of hostility and sort of, even though there's not necessarily a direct point of conflict, sort of just being in a disorienting environment or seeing other people you don't really like know too well, uh, it creates it causes people to be less trustful. And I think that's something that becomes a bigger problem through globalization because so many cultures are mixing. Um, and second, I think that international law it becomes very difficult for everyone to follow if I guess like the theory of laws suggests that laws so sort of organize specific people, if we're organizing sort of the entire globe, it becomes really difficult to create something that's really coherent that everyone will want to follow because another important aspect of law is that it's something that uh, people are motivated to follow. And I think in terms of my own personal identity, as someone who's interested in technology and how technology can solve a lot of sort of everyday problems and also problems around the world, I think this is really important, as we can see in a lot of current events dealing with, for example, cryptocurrency and how different countries have come to accept it, and also international law regarding things like social media and privacy. Clearly, it becomes really hard to come to like an international consensus. Third, I think this I kind of got from the article about like ethnic ambiguity is I think if we increasingly become a post-racial society, I think we're forced to move away from our perceptions of a race that I think are very, very ingrained in each of our like countries' histories and uh, the different like politics that surround our country. And I think the faster we move into globalization, the faster we're going to have to be forced to move away from those perceptions, what I think is just very difficult in general because we all have very sort of like solidified ideas about what's right and wrong and kind of like what we understand with regards to race. In terms of my own personal identity, I think as an immigrant, uh, from being from an immigrant family, I think I've sort of been a part of globalization, and I think at least for myself that I've been very lucky to find an opportunity and be able to kind of move. But I think living as a U.S. citizen, it's very obvious that especially in recent years, there's been a lot of like sort of uh, political debate about things that are kind of relevant to globalization. For example, the refugee crisis, and also things like illegal immigration and what we should do and how we should sort of treat illegal immigrants. And I think as a U.S. citizen, as being part of my identity now, is that being able to relate to sort of some of kind of like also as an immigrant, I think it's important to kind of engage in politics and be able to help sort of like uh, advocate for other people who obviously have like a harder time dealing with that than I did. And I think in terms of my global internship, I think that definitely since I've come here, I've been able to notice how a lot of sort of the differences, cultural differences between the US and Japan, I think I've seen how they seem to be a reflection of like the histories of the two different countries. And I think uh, being able to observe that has helped me kind of like have something to uh, reflect on, and also is almost like evidence of natural theory kind of happening is that like I can see how different laws are influenced by the people that are in them and kind of the cultures that surround them, whether it be like religiously or just kind of like intellectually.